Good afternoon and welcome to the Walworth County Zoning Agency meeting, Thursday, December 19th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Roll call, please.
Rick Stacy, Chair.
Here.
Sue Prusing, Vice Chair. Sue Prusing is absent. Dennis Karbowski.
Present.
Joanne Laufenberg.
Here.
Bud Wojcik.
Here.
Richard Cookie Senior.
Here.
Jim Van Drieser.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
A motion by Kunke. Second by Laufenberg.
With said changes, we'll have, items 8B3, 8B4, and 8D1 will not be heard this evening. They'll be tabled the next month.
Okay, so we all have that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes, November 21st, 2024 is motion by Krowski, second by Kunke. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5 is our zoning, sanitation, land conservation enforcement. Michael Cotter is here if we have any questions, but that's on page 16 through 28.
If I could, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I just wanted to point out that we had a trial for a issue in the town of Lyons that Nick was involved in. We were successful in the trial, but it's still, I don't know, Nick, if you want to give a 20-second overview of it. We're still not in compliance, that's the unfortunate part of trials. You can win, but you still lose, and we continue to lose until we get compliance. That's what we're after is compliance with the zoning code. But Nick, if you, I don't know, give a highlight of it.
The gist of the trial was the gentleman had put an addition or built a structure next to his house in a residential subdivision right up to the lot line without any permits or anything like that. I wrote him.
Real quick, I just want to acknowledge it. Sue, we get into that on this now. Thank you.
He acknowledged that he needed a permit when I told him he did. I guess he didn't really dispute that, but yep, we ended up taking it as far as going to trial, and the judge found him guilty and ordered him to pay the citation, and so we're working on getting him a permit, and he's going to alter it to where it meets the setback requirement. He's not happy about it, and he's got his permit issued. He's gotten some of it down. I don't think it's complete yet.
Is that the December 18th court date? Was that yesterday?
No,
Did you have one yesterday?
I don't think so.
And just for what it's worth, that one has been quite a few complaints from the neighborhood, and the county board supervisors have been, or supervisor has been following that closely. What really started it was started out as we thought was a business, a sawmill operation running in the at the property. That's what really made the neighbors upset with the noise and the volume of, I think the noise in general, and then it became quickly, after Nick and he had a number of conversations, that it wasn't a business, it was a hobby. And then he had ads up on various websites and then took those ads down and stopped outwardly selling, but was doing it as a hobby. But that was really what the neighbor, is that fair to say, Nick, that was what the neighbors were?
That was the initial complaint letters referenced this structure and the sawmill.
Yeah, I just thought, I put it into context for you that we have, why it was an addition. Normally I wouldn't spend as much time on a minor zoning violation, but anyway, it's still in non-compliance and we'll still have to work on it and then, hopefully get compliance and the neighborhood can, go about their business, so. Other than that, I don't have anything off the top of my head.
Dennis?
I was looking at page 2574-44, a 6-foot fence or a tall fence, and it's the court date scheduled here December 18th. Am I missing something?
Is that Sam's?
Samantha's, yeah, I don't know, that wouldn't be a trial, that would be, maybe a citation date where they set it for trial or something. I'm not sure what happened with that, Mr. Kowalski, we could,
We can find out.
I'm just curious.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Seeing none, subdivision items, old business none, new business none, old business. Ordinance amendments, number 1, non-metallic mining setback, and that's Nick, page 29 through 30.
thank you. So based on conversations we had at the last couple of meetings, I drafted up some proposed language here with your guys' guidance. Generally, reducing the 200-foot perimeter setback for excavations and things similar to gravel pits. So reducing it from the 200-foot setback that we have now down to 100 feet. There was concerns about neighboring homes, residential areas, and municipal areas where you might have libraries or schools or churches or that type of thing. So what I'm proposing here is that any lot line that's within 1,000 feet of an existing house, and when I say a lot line, I mean a lot line or a portion of that lot line, the lot lines that are, or portions thereof that are within 1,000 feet of an existing house, or within 1,000 feet of a residential zone district, or within 1,000 feet of a P1 or P2, which are like the municipal type zone districts, the park districts where those libraries and churches and things are. So any of those portions of lot lines that are within 1,000 feet of any of those things, it would remain status quo where there would be a 200-foot setback from those lot lines. So that's kind of the first highlighted part I have in there. And then the last few lines I added in, that we can also at the committee, at the county zoning agency level, we can allow or totally eliminate the setbacks when it's a lot line that's an interior lot line within the pit. Because we've run into that on numerous pits where there's multiple parcels or even different landowners involved, and rather than having a setback from this lot line and have land sticking up in the middle of the pit, these folks go for variances in front of the Board of Adjustment and ask for 0-foot setbacks. As far as I know, every time somebody's requested that, it's been approved at the Board of Adjustment level. It can make restoration of that pit make more sense to not have a big hump in it and things like that. So I'm basically proposing we just allow it to take place here rather than having to send them to the Board of Adjustment, hope for the best, and then back here again. So that's what those last few lines are in regards to.
Nick, do you want to talk them through that map so you can kind of illustrate?
Yeah, so the map here is the Fremont pit. Johnson Sand and Gravel, I believe, are the operators. They were the ones that initially brought this up, both I think this go round and when we discussed this a year or two ago. They went to the Board of Adjustment to ask for a variance to be closer to that Bowers Road Highway 43 exit ramp there. That would be on the southeast part of the map here. And so I used that pit as an example. So everywhere where we have red lines or portions of lines are areas where it's within 1,000 feet of any of those limiting houses or zone districts and whatnot. So those lot lines would still have 200-foot setbacks, but any of those green ones, they would have the opportunity to amend their conditional use or reclamation plans and mine within 100 feet in those areas. So you can see it, I think, accomplishes what we had talked about, where areas where it's remote or just farm fields or whatever surrounding it, they can get that extra gravel there. I also reached out to the DOT and Rich Huff, who's the director of the Walworth County Public Works Department, and asked them if they had any concerns about us reducing that setback near the roadways, and both of them indicated that they wouldn't have any concerns with the 100-foot setback from the roads.
And you wanna, the Land Conservation Committee,
Yes, good, thanks for the reminder. The Land Conservation Committee discussed this on Monday, and they recommended approval to you. And again, for those folks that are listening in the audience, what would happen, if, depending on what happens now, the committee could direct us to go back and make changes to the ordinance, that might happen, or the committee might say, set it for a public hearing, and then that would be the time for the industry folks and the people that are interested in gravel pits to come to our public hearing and speak and voice concerns or questions or make suggestions. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're not quite there yet. We'll know in the next probably 10 minutes where we're going with this, but those are kind of the options.
John?
I think, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt it as printed, or at least forward it as printed, for hearing.
Second, do you have your hand up, Joanne?
Yeah, I was wondering if we got any advice from engineers like I was suggesting last month.
How many what, I didn't hear you say.
Engineers. I talked to a civil engineer who said, that if, slope stability would be our concern, and it's not always water that's an issue. Sometimes if it's not just solid rock and it's, mixed in with soil, that there can be issues, and I see they backfill it, but, could it be left empty for years because they started in that section and are working their way back? I'm just concerned, I realize that there are also depth issues in our ordinance where where it has to be less than 2.5 times the proposed maximum depth. The setback requirement to be reduced to less than 2.5 times. I'm sorry, it made sense when I read it before, but it's not right now. In no case shall the setback requirement be reduced to less than 2.5 times the proposed maximum depth. So that is some sort of assurance that slope stability or erosion wouldn't be an issue, but at the same time, it would be nice if we added when it's going to be near a road or someone else's property, as in the southern delineation of the property, that we get an engineer involved, a soils engineer.
Mr. Chair, could I start with that
Go
one?
ahead.
So, not to speak for Nick, and I know Nick will weigh in, so, as Nick said, he spoke to the DOT and spoke to, Mr. Huff, that we spoke at length as staff about the concern about engineering, and I think we have some thoughts on that, and it's so site specific, depending on how the site is. Like you just said, it could be
Right.
rock, and we're not engineers and don't pretend to be them. But I think, Nick, do you wanna go through what you were thinking about
Yeah, I could go back to the drawing board a little bit here and add something into the ordinance that gives the committee to, require engineering where people are gonna reduce the setback, then based on, there could even be some parameters based on depth or materials type or whatever.
Right,
And
if it's
then-
not solid rock and it's near a road or
Yeah.
someone else's property.
Put some parameters in there that make it less arbitrary as to when engineering is gonna be required or not required, and then give the committee the ability to request that during the conditional use process. I don't wanna make it a blanket requirement where it's just another expense or hurdle or whatever that they have to do in a case where it might be relatively apparent they don't need to based on the depth or something.
Right.
But, from a standpoint of Act 67 and so on, I also wanna have something in the ordinance that says that this can be required of you when you're applying for the conditional use. So I could get something like that in there if the, board wants to consider that. As far as the 2.5 times the proposed depth thing, I just wanna add, that was some existing language in the ordinance that had to do with clay borrows. So when people are mining clay, that's something that's gonna be fairly shallow and also pretty stable. So there was already some language in the ordinance that allowed, clay borrow to be modified to lower setbacks, and that's where that 2.5 times came in.
So that's only in relation to clay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we have a motion and a second on the floor.
So, but am I asking that we amend the motion? I would like to move that we amend the motion to include.
We have a motion out to amend the motion.
To include requirements near other properties and, roadways, other buildings and roadways
Okay. Do we have a second?
to get engineering done.
Well, I would second that, cause Nick said he could work on putting that in there, it's probably better to put it in there and not need it than to need it and not have it. I mean, it does make sense, none of us are engineers, so, and I don't think that's putting an extra burden on the builder, or, it wouldn't be in every situation.
Okay, so we have a first and a second to amend the motion. Is everybody clear on that? So we're gonna vote on amending the motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, so then that's the amendment, so now you need to vote on, you have a first and a second for the motion as amended, so then, that'll be the next vote, but if we could, how do you want us to go? Like, right now, it's set where it would be set for a hearing. Do you want us to take that language and go direct, and publish it and go directly to a hearing, or do you want it back?
Discussion?
I don't, should we look at it? I mean.
I
it
would
seems-
trust Nick and your
Yeah.
office to put that in there and then go right to the hearing.
It's
As long as
coming
it
back
has
to us
language that
regardless,
would
correct?
require engineering.
It's coming back to you regardless, and this is important for the folks that are listening. There's two groups of people that are listening, right? The industry folks that are here listening, this is very important to them. And then there's other folks that are interested in mines that will eventually listen to this. I'm sure both sides of this will be at that public hearing. Based on what you hear at the public hearing, once you get it back, then you can make changes based on what you hear. You might hear some people say stick with 200 feet, other people are gonna say go to 50, other people are gonna say we want engineering, we don't want engineering. At the end of the day, you guys get to decide. I'm just trying to lay that out so everybody knows where we're at. This is not changing right now.
So it can go straight to a hearing.
So are we comfortable going with the motion, send it right to public hearing next month, and then, is that enough?
I don't, not to interrupt, but that's not gonna be enough time because
Okay.
Cheryl needs to publish it and Nick needs to do it.
Publish, yeah, so many times.
Yeah,
2
so
months then, or?
what, you think February for public hearing maybe, Nick?
I can do whatever you can do from a timing standpoint. Like, whatever you need to do for noticing and stuff, I can work with.
I don't wanna force it to January because we have very limited time between now and,
Do you have to set the date?
I would just rather the public know, cause then I don't want
Sure.
folks to show up expecting
Sure.
a public hearing.
Was
Do you
it
feel more
in
comfortable,
February?
Nick, doing it in March?
Kate, when are we doing farmland preservation?
I don't know the schedule off the top of my head, but we're sending it for review to DATCAP, hopefully in January to start the preliminary review. So they probably won't see it until February, March, probably at the earliest for actual public hearing of the farmland preservation stuff.
I feel like we could probably do it in February or March. My thought was, we have this farmland preservation ordinance amendment too, and do we wanna just amend the ordinance all at once with a couple of different things at the same time, or do we wanna amend the ordinance multiple months in a row? If that makes any difference to anybody, I'm flexible.
That's a fair question to the board, if you guys, how you feel about it.
Then I would say do March. You okay with that? Kate?
I'm not positive we'll be able to have it synced up in March, but there is at least a chance that I have to do it in March.
Okay, are we ready for the question for March public hearing? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Farmland preservation zoning, that's Nick, page 31 through 39.
This is something I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on. We probably didn't even need to have it on the agenda. That might be my bad. Kate and I are working on, we had discussed last month, I think, of, I brought those similar to what we just did with gravel pits, the proposed language based on those recommendations. Now we are going through the entire ordinance from the farmland preservation standpoint to see if anything else needs to be amended. Then we'll be sending it off to DATCAP for their cursory review before we take it to hearing and everything, and then have them tell us we need to change something. So, for the next month or two here, we're gonna be basically working with DATCAP to try to iron out any wrinkles before it goes to public hearing.
Yeah, we don't, if you have any questions or further thoughts, I know we've had it for the past 3 months maybe, but if you've thought of something, you wanna talk about it more, we can. If not, we can keep moving.
All right, we'll move on to discussion item. The next one